Okay, gang, I'm gonna get going. Recording is in progress. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. My name is Sandy McDonald. I'm the Director of the Office of Economic and Small Business Development, and we're here again. I actually do get to say that with a smile. Rafael might tell you guys during his presentation why I say it with a smile, because he was with me 11 years ago when I got here. So good morning again. I'm happy to be here. It is that season. And myself, along with my colleagues, more importantly, my colleagues, my coworkers, my anchors, are going to share with you this morning about stay ready. It's not about getting ready. You got to get ready, but you should stay ready. This is about a business resiliency webinar. This is about hurricane preparedness. In a bigger picture, this is about emergency preparedness. But we do this every year by design, and it's intended to make sure that you, your business, your family and friends, your other businesses, your other suppliers, what you know they should know. So we want to make sure that after you get this great information today, that you also share this information with as many as possible. So what we're going to do is go through a series of presentations. They are long. We're going to try not to bore you. It's a whole bunch of information. I'm going to zip through mine. Questions and answers. There will be Q&A at the end. So please take notes. And if you got a question, you can put it in the Q&A, but we won't answer them until the end. Some staff might go in during the presentation, and based on your question, they might answer it on the spot. But we will officially have a Q&A at the end of all presentations. So if there's a question that you need, stick it in the Q&A. If it gets answered, that's great. If not, we will certainly try to get to it at the end. Okay, the Office of Economic Small Business Development. We're here on behalf of Broward County Board of County Commissioners. I'm primarily economic and opportunity, relevant to why our agency is here to service and support businesses, especially small businesses in Broward County. Next slide. And again, on behalf of the county administrator, Monica Shapiro, she just wants to make sure that we recognize, that you recognize, that our audience often recognizes that this is about a live, work, play environment, and economic development has a lot to do with how we, in terms of the quality, live, learn, work, and play right here in Broward County. Next slide. Discussion topics today. We're going to talk about Emergency Operations Center, the Resilient Broward, disaster response, business continuity, lessons learned, resources for local businesses. Guys, if you've been here before, thank you. Because these are things you need to know, and every year be prepared. If this is your first time, please, again, I get to say it in advance. The workshop is relatively long. I enjoy all of my colleagues that'll be presenting. We'll try to get through this and put the emphasis on the key points. Staff will make sure that this entire presentation, the PowerPoint, is on our website by the end of the week, so you'll have access to it. But we want you to just understand, we're not here to bore you, but this is the time of the year that this information is vitally important. So I'm glad you've joined us. And I think you know just as much as I do about how important this really is. Next slide. And now I get to, and I won't even tell you as I start to smile about the running joke. Dr. Jurado is nationally, internationally known. We're just excited that she's ours. And I often have to apologize to her because I be going too fast when I'm typing emails. And I be talking to staff and I connect her because she got that JJ going. Like I need two staff with the JJ going. But with that being said, Doctor, thank you for joining us today. The floor is yours.
Oh, Sandy, it's absolutely my pleasure. And I'm just glad that the emails were unintentional, because otherwise I thought I've just totally missed the boat. I have no idea what's going on and I've really dropped the ball. But I'm glad to be here today and to support the conversation with regards to resilience planning in our environment, and with a focus on small businesses. Next slide, please. So I just updated some of the slides from the last year, and I am pleased to have been invited back. Next slide, please. And just wanting to hit some of the highlights with regards to I think it's really the compounding of factors that make hurricane and storm preparedness more of a challenge in our community and not really isolated to the hurricane months. As we know, we had the experience of April last year that really demonstrates that we can be dealing with extreme flood circumstances really any time of the year. I'm not going to be talking so much about wind because it's not an area of particular focus when we're thinking about some of the future conditions planning. But clearly the climate pressures are increasing the severity of our windstorms while also coupling the challenge of increased rainfall intensification, rising seas that create higher storm surge. And those two things in combination, increased rainfall and storm surge, make it more and more difficult to keep water off our landscape. And what does that mean? It means the potential for more intense flooding, more damage, economic disruptions, concerns for our team members and staff who may be trying to operate in these conditions, maybe dealing with effects at work or at home. And I think it's really important to raise the issue of extreme heat, because when we do have these conditions and potentially dealing with power failures at the same time, we're also experiencing much more in the way of higher temperature indices that make it physically a potential threat to our health when all of these conditions coincide, and we have to have greater heat awareness while we're dealing with potential other impacts. And so I'm just going to be sharing today some of the work that's taking place that I hope will aid our businesses in thinking more about site-specific risk, both at work and at home. Next slide, please. And just recognizing it as well that this year is a year in which we may be seeing extremes that we've not seen before. And it's every year we're dealing with a worsening in the climate condition. 2023, we saw record-breaking heat in Broward County in South Florida, record-breaking rainfall. We typically have about 58 inches a year of rainfall. Last year, we saw more than 100 in Fort Lauderdale. And again, these can come in very narrow periods of time with very little time to prepare, whereas a hurricane can provide a little bit more as we're all doing our readiness, which is why it's really important to think about these conditions as a matter of just practice year round and have an appreciation of how we can mitigate for flood effects. Next slide, please. So we've been working on a county-wide resilience strategy, and I'm going to share this because there will be some tools coming available in the very near future that I think are going to be very useful in terms of really understanding at a very local level our particular exposures. As well, you're going to have a lot more information addressing some of the economic conditions that we anticipate to coincide with these more extreme events, and the economic imperative that we have in organizing infrastructure to deal with and mitigate with these conditions before they actually occur. Next slide, please. And so one of the most critical pieces of work taking place right now has been our ability to bring into the model environment the whole layering of factors that contributes to flood risk. So this is not just the fact that we have a 1 in 100-year storm or a 500-year storm, but that again, it's on top of sea level rise, potentially coupled with a storm surge, maybe also occurring when we have an increase in the groundwater table. The point being that we don't have the luxury of just one factor at a time, but oftentimes we're dealing with the layering of these factors, which we call compound flood effects. So in Broward County, we've been working to hone all of our models in a way that we can layer those factors and really begin to understand the coupling that creates additional risk at home. And so these panels here actually show, like the upper right panel is 2 feet sea level rise, the bottom left is 3 foot sea level rise, the bottom right is 3 foot sea level rise with storm surge. And we can begin to look at how exposed are we in a given area and what type of adaptations might we need in order to reduce that risk. Next slide, please. And the modeling itself, we have carried it out across the entire landscape. So we've been able to look at census tracts and where we have heightened risk based upon elevations and infrastructure. We've been able to look at roadway disruptions under a particular set of scenarios. Some of these may be very, very extreme. Nonetheless, the graphic in the middle shows the extent to which we actually have the potential for storm impacts to be, you know, cascading across all of the county. And it's not just in the traditional like coastal area like someone might anticipate. And so the real importance of keeping our roadways open in order to support our businesses. And then we've also been able to look at economic implications by sector, and we've been able to tease out average annual losses. We're looking at pulling out very specific event-related losses, and again, helps to reinforce the importance of having resilience in our infrastructure to avoid any of these scenarios playing out in their full entirety. Next slide, please. And here's just some of the detailing in terms of jobs at risk, annual profit at risk, and again, by sectors, and understanding that none of us are isolated and that the implications are, these are just based upon flood. They're not even yet incorporating heat risk and how that can generate additional downtime that affects our businesses. Next slide, please. And so we're working on this landscape level of solutions. And I think it's really important to note that we've built resilience into the new design requirements for infrastructure, but we're actually going to have to start coming back into the existing environment and really looking at how we can create more storage, because there's simply not enough ability to just pump water. So we do need to be pumping, but this is very relevant because we're looking and we'll need to think ourselves, where we have heightened risk, can that be mitigated with seawalls? Can it be mitigated with drainage wells on our individual properties? Can we enhance percolation of water into the soils through some alternative practices? Maybe we will have to go back and retrofit with additional storage. So some of the work that we're doing will be landscape level across all of Broward County, but many of the folks here may be aware that there could be a need to address site-specific resilience, and this ability to generate storage on our individual properties or within existing infrastructure is going to be a critical point moving forward, and it's something to start thinking about. Next slide, please. And so the relevance moving forward is that we are on the brink of being able to provide much more in the way of site-specific information, where an individual by this next fall will be able to go in and insert an address, have this information, and be able to think about these exposures very locally and start asking the right questions in terms of partnership opportunities with our local governments. What are the infrastructure plans that are anticipated? How much more needs to happen on a site-specific basis? How does the adaptation strategies that are being modeled look to mitigate the very local conditions? And where there are additional improvements needed, where can I, as a private individual, either at home or at my business, work to make the additional improvements that help to mitigate that risk? So stay tuned for those additional details. But in the meantime, there are tools available on the website where you can currently have more site-specific information at the broward.org/resilience plan. And then I would just encourage that conversation with employees at home, that we're looking at both the real estate of where our businesses are located, as well as what those conditions are at home, and making sure that we're thinking thoughtfully about flood, as well as what are the heat mitigation measures that can be employed if we're having to bring folks back to work. It is very hot. How are we able to deal with that under these very acute conditions? So I look forward to coming back in the fall, or receiving inquiries directly to help explore the more site-specific questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jurado. I really appreciate you sharing that information. And guys, in case you didn't know, she could have did that with us for about 3 hours plus, but she has some very detailed information. And on a serious tip, we want to make sure you guys have access to her information. When you hear about the summits coming up, that you certainly want to attempt to participate. And again, all of this is about making sure you as a business is always ready. And some of the things you need to be aware of that's happening globally right here that is going to prepare you to get ready. So thank you again, Dr. Jurado. We're getting ready to move now to Ms. Holloway. Ms. Holloway is an outreach coordinator for our emergency management division. I won't steal her thunder. I'll let her come to you and share what our emergency management is all about, what her role is. But again, this is about getting you the information you need so that you're prepared and that you're ready and that you stay ready. And as we said in the beginning, in case you just joined us, if you have questions, we'll entertain those at the end, but you can feel comfortable putting those in the Q&A down below. They might get answered during the presentations, but if not, we'll certainly be entertaining questions at the end. So with that, Ms. Holloway, take it away.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting our office to participate in this very meaningful summit. I want to thank Dr. Jurado for describing all of the hazards in Broward County, which is all the more reason why you need to have a business continuity plan or continuity of operations plan. I bring greetings on behalf of the Broward County Office of Emergency Management, where Clay Pacheco is our director. My name is Reson Holloway, and I am the outreach coordinator. And today I will be presenting ways to make your business more resilient by having a business continuity plan. So before I dive into our topic, I want to share a little information about our office. I know most people associate us with hurricanes, but our office responds to all incidents that occur within Broward County or affect Broward County. This includes hazardous material spills, severe weather events, school-based incidents, water main breaks, etc. We support all phases of emergency management, and today we are engaging in a preparedness activity, and I hope everyone takes something from this presentation that can help you prepare for hurricane season. Next slide. The transatlantic hurricane season begins on June 1st and goes through November 30th. But I think last year alone can just remind us that we do have severe weather that forms outside of these dates for hurricane season. Next slide. Today, many businesses are faced with the potential for disruptions, ranging from cyber attacks to ransomware, severe weather events, as well as global pandemics. And we all know that an emergency doesn't have respect for time. It can happen with or without warning, during normal business hours, after hours. It does not matter if it's a weekday or the weekend, and it can be widespread, something that affects whole communities, or even something that is contained, like an emergency within the building that you're operating in. Next slide. It's important to create plans that outline the steps that you would take to prevent downtime for your business. A disaster recovery plan, it helps your company move forward after an incident. It's focused on returning your business to normal. A business continuity plan, it prioritizes keeping your business or organization open and running in whole or in part, regardless of cause or duration. Next slide. So everyone has a role in continuity, and you're all responsible for ensuring that you can continue your essential functions. When an event occurs in your community may depend on your organization to deliver essential functions throughout an incident. So having a thorough and tested business continuity plan helps to ensure that those vital services are available when your clients or customers need them the most. Next slide. So here are a few strategies to develop your recovery procedure. They could be physical solutions, such as backup generators or duplication of services, equipment, or processes that you use. It could be installation of processes of equipment that serve to bypass an interruption. Operational solutions are changing a way of doing business in an effort to head off the effects of the outage, such as using more than one supplier for a specific good or service that you provide. There are also response and recovery solutions that establish timely and effective post-incident tactics that accelerate resumption of your processes. And that could be establishing temporary means of doing business. For instance, going to a virtual setting instead of being in your physical building if you've had some type of damages to your building. Next slide. And these are a few events that can trigger your business continuity plan. Next slide. So here are a few of the key areas that your business continuity plan should address, including your facility needs. If your facility sustains damage, knowing who to contact for repairs should be documented in your plan to ensure a quick response. Consider contractors like plumbers, electricians, those that restore your different services like utilities, and similar skilled trades and suppliers. Personnel needs. Your business continuity plan should show your staff how and when you will communicate during a crisis, and also include them when you're making the plan, as they are vital to your recovery process. IT and data needs. You should consider having a good cloud backup provider. Copies and compresses and encrypts your company's vital information before sending it to a secure offsite data location so that you don't lose all of your information if your systems go down. You should also have a part that addresses supply chain and distribution channel needs, developing relationship with alternative vendors in case your primary contractor is not available. It's also a good idea to find out who your key suppliers are and if they have a recovery plan. And also funding needs. Consider what an interruption could mean for revenue as well as payroll. If a disaster is declared by FEMA, you may have access to low interest loans from the federal government. So it's always good to know what your recovery options are from the financial aspect. Next slide. I also encourage you to exercise your plan. Doing annual drills with your staff will show you what's effective and what preparedness plans may need to be updated. Exercises are critical to make sure that your vital systems work. Know that your personnel have the knowledge they need to implement continuity of operations plans when needed, and that the plan works as intended. You can use different types of exercises, such as a tabletop, where you talk through different scenarios and go through the plan to see what you would do if certain situations happen in your business. Functional, which tests maybe just a part of your COOP activation, that's continuity of operation plan, independent of other entities that may be included in a full-scale activation. And you can also do a full-scale activation, which is as close to a real scenario as possible. This is where the total response is tested. Next slide. The next few slides will give you some additional resources where you can find examples of continuity of operations plans and business continuity plans, and tips on what you could include in yours. Next slide. Of course, yours may look different from other connections you have in the world of small business. They will differ depending on the focus of your business, who you serve, and what processes you need in place in order to sustain essential functions. And I always like to end with a message about personal preparedness. Of course, you want to know that your business is in a good place, but you also have to take care of home. It's important that you have a plan for your households. Do not forget your pets. Make sure that your household is stocked with supplies for at least 72 hours, just in case essential functions have not been restored and gas stations or grocery stores may not be open. You want to secure your home and property, making sure that your lawn does not contain different items that could become projectiles if we have high winds. You want to make sure that your vehicle is topped off with fuel, just in case we have any type of fuel outage or you aren't able to get to a gas station. If you have an evacuation order, you want to be able to get up and go. Next slide. So that concludes my presentation. I hope that everyone got something from this presentation that will help them implement ways that their business can become more resilient, and you have a plan in place just in case the unexpected happens. Thank you.
Ms. Holloway, thank you. Thanks for that information. And guys, one of the points that she tried to make clear towards the end, and I'm glad that she mentioned she likes to end with personal messages. Your business is your business owners. You're not going to really be able to address your business if you haven't taken care of yourself and your family. And it's vice versa. If you take care of your family and it's not taken care of, then you're also going to be delinquent about taking care of your business. So definitely make sure that you are in a position that you've taken care of your personal, you've taken care of your private, you've taken care of your family, so you can focus on making sure your business has the opportunity to not just sustain, but to recover in case anything happens. And then that'll take me into my presentation as we talk a little bit about business recovery. Again, Sandy McDonald, the Office of Economic and Small Business Development, but in the case of today's scenario, ESF 18. Next slide. I'm going to talk to you about our shop. This is the Broward County's emergency response team. This is our BERT. This is all the different organizations. These are all the different divisions that are responsible. And I'm going to drill down a little bit on ours. Next slide. Emergency Service Function 18, Business and Industry. We got Operation Chief, Infrastructure Branch Director, ESF 18 Supervisor. And I'm primarily working with the business recovery unit leaders as well as the hotel hospitality unit leaders. I'm your ESF 18 Supervisor. Next slide. Emergency Support Function 18. We're about planning and coordinating the activities for recovery. We assist in the coordination of preparedness and preparing for what eventually might need to be recovery. Next slide. That's our day job. We're the liaisons between the big grocery stores, the gas stations, the banks, to make sure that no matter what the scenario is, no matter what the emergency, especially hurricane, as we're going through those scenarios and you now begin to need county, state, and federal assistance, we need to see how fast the banks can get back open, how fast the grocery stores can get back open, how fast the gas station can get back open. Because once we're back into the public domain of allowing the for-profit businesses to do what they do, then we begin to wean off of the assistance that you might be needing from your local, from your county, from your state, or your federal. So we're responsible for making sure that we can prepare that information. And as we're going through the process of a storm or an emergency, addressing and keeping those communication lines up so that when there isn't all clear, we know exactly what direction we're going. Next slide. We coordinate with partners to provide business damage impact. The ideal is that as we're going through, if something happens, we also work with other partners, and you'll hear from some of them later, to make sure that there's a damage assessment so folks can begin to identify where the additional dollars or the supporting dollars, the supporting loan dollars might be coming from. And we're also part of the team that requests activation from the Florida Small Business Bridge Loan. You'll hear more about that later. Next slide. Again, on behalf of recovery, we want to ensure that businesses and industry have access to timely information. That's why when we're setting this up every year, when we're doing this workshop every year, we're also trying to make sure that beyond today's workshop, we're going to do one with municipalities later this week. We're going to have this on our website. We're going to push out more information as we go through June. And as we're in the month of June and July, we're trying to make sure that information is not only available, but businesses know who to access and when, how to get in touch with us. And in the end, based on an all clear, we are the ones responsible for setting up these days what we call the Virtual Business Recovery Center. Next slide. The purpose of the recovery center is to respond to the immediate needs and supporting long-term recovery. Again, we won't have everything, but for the information we have, for what you need to know, for where you need to go, how you need to fill out information, how you need to access the bridge loan, understanding when there's a countywide all clear, a lot of that through our communication channels we'll be sharing. And the other part about that is we get it. Some people's power may not be available. And again, that's where some of our other means of communicating and networking comes in. So again, as we're getting the all clear, we find different modes and methods and ways of sharing that information. We work with our community partners. Of course, we work with all first responders. There's other direct and indirect teams and partnerships that we have throughout the county. Again, we try to make sure that the information finds its way to all of our businesses, understanding there might not be just one single channel to do it. So that's why we use multiple ways of trying to get that information out. And the business recovery centers that you'll know about at the beginning of each season is just one of those ways. Next slide. The objective of the recovery is to provide some relief information to assess the needs of small businesses, to work with municipal partners and other economic development organizations so that we can get you access to those resources, and to provide assistance in identifying short-term and long-term needs. We get it. If ever we're hit with one of those major activities or events, we're going to need to make sure, you're going to need to make sure that there's real communication where you can find some support, short-term, if not long-term, to meet those business needs. Next slide. So the virtual business recovery service is a technical assistance in the application process of the disaster assistance loans, local state bridge loans, information about other financial assistance. When we set up these virtuals, we want to just make sure all the information that's being shared with us, we can post it and find other ways of communicating to the 31 municipalities, to the 17 chambers, and sometimes with the bigger businesses directly with them, so that information flows to the everyday business. Every business is a concern of Broward County when we're going through this process. So we're trying to find ways that all businesses have access to our information. Next slide. And that would be it for me. And again, that's our phone number. That's our contact. Again, these slides, this PowerPoint will be up on our website by the end of the week. So you'll have access to it. You will be able to share this with other businesses that you know that's not joining us today. And hopefully you use the information that's been shared and the upcoming speakers' information to prepare you for getting ready as well as staying ready in case we have an incident. So again, we're going to do Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, you can type them in. Some of us might get to them during the presentations, but if not, Q&A will take place at the end of the presentations. Okay, so next, we're going to have our friends from Florida Power and Light Company. Mr. Friedrich will come to you and share. FPL is such a big partner and player in the county year-round, not just during hurricane preparedness, because you will hear they do things before hurricane season, during hurricane season, after hurricane season. But again, we all know how important they are to us and the region. Morton?
Okay. Well, thank you for the introduction, Sandy. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I'm not Ben Wesley, I'm Morton Friedrich, but we're just going to give you just a quick overview of our hurricane season process. One thing I'd like to stress is a lot of times we get caught up in numbers. I know the hurricane predictions for the 2024 season for the Atlantic Basin came out with 12 named storms. And one thing I'd like to stress is if we can go back to 1992, that was a less than active hurricane season, but there's one significant storm that pretty much affected the landscape of South Florida forever. So just that was Hurricane Andrew. So just bear that in mind. It's not the number of storms that's important. All it takes is one that can really unsettle everything. Next slide, please. Okay, so FPL, basically you can look at the map here. We just don't cover the Tri-County area. We go up the eastern seaboard, portion of the western coast of Florida from Sarasota south. And a few years ago, we acquired Gulf Power, which goes from Panama City all the way west to Pensacola. What you're seeing here is basically our number of miles of distribution lines, transmission lines, transformers, substations. the majority of our customers live within 20 miles of the coast. That usually gets hit the most. And, right now we're almost up to 6 million customers that we serve within our service territory. Next slide, please. Okay, so we do year-round storm preparations. As a matter of fact, 2 weeks ago, we just had our corporate dry run where we simulate an actual storm impacting the peninsula within our service territory. So we just got over that training, and like I think one of the speakers before alluded to, doing tabletop exercises. That's what this is. It's more than a tabletop exercise. We actually test our systems, and whatever problems we find, we try to fix it before an actual storm does strike. Next slide, please. Okay, so this one, basically last year it was a active storm season. We were all, the northern part of the state was affected by Hurricane Idalia. Next slide, please. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, Hurricane Idalia, by then was a Category 3 storm. Basically, where we're at in that region of the state, we're surrounded by other electric companies. So we had less than 200,000 customers affected, and we restored the power rather quickly. Next slide, please. Okay, so within 2 days, we restored to everybody. And what we say is essentially to all impacted customers, anybody that can accept power. So some facilities may have structural damage where they can't accept electricity, but within 2 days after Idalia exited Florida, we had essentially everybody restored. Next slide, please. Okay, so everything stood up very well. Our solar sites, our power generation were not impacted at all. Didn't have any problems with it. Next slide, please. Okay, so we had some other unnamed storms. I like one of the previous speakers had mentioned, it's not just the hurricanes. Everybody remembers last April where we had a 1,000-year flood in the greater Fort Lauderdale area. And that, basically we had 25 inches of rain within 12 hours. So we're constantly working on storm restoration. It's not just the named storms. Next slide, please. Okay, and we support our neighbors as well. So, if you've been down here for our hurricanes, excuse me, you may have noticed other vehicles in here with different names on the trucks other than FPL. You may have seen Georgia Power, Entergy. So we have mutual service agreements with other companies. So when things happen in Florida, they send their personnel to assist us, and we return the favor. So when other states, have severe weather, we deploy our crews as well as part of a mutual service agreement. Next, please. Okay, so outside of storm training, what we've been doing is we've been actually strengthening our infrastructure. You may have seen it. We are hardening our feeders. Those are our main trunk lines. We're going with concrete, strong wood poles, better insulators. All of our transmission structures, the big transmission lines, the poles are either steel or concrete. As a matter of fact, last year we retired our last wood structure in our system. And then we continue with continuous tree trimming and pole inspections. Tree trimming, that's an ongoing thing. Unfortunately, a bigger problem with that is just, right tree, right place. We ask people, please don't plant trees near a power line. It's Florida, trees grow. Up in the Northeast, it could take years for a tree to grow, but down here in Florida with our climate, they grow very quickly. So, trees that we trim a year ago or 2 years ago that are close to our power lines, they're growing right back into power lines. So, if you are considering planting a tree, we have plenty of information on our website about right tree, right place. So please, take that into consideration, when you're planting the tree. Next slide, please. Okay, so, we're always, focusing on reliability, and we've seen significant improvements in reliability. Next slide, please. Okay, so we use smart grid technology. So many of you may have it at your homes. You may be aware of it, maybe not. We have what are called smart meters. Basically, they are wireless devices that capture consumption. At the same time, what they can do is they allow us to see who's on or who's off. And that's really come in handy during these last several storms where we can do bulk meter pings just to see if the meters are responding. If they respond back to us, we know that the power is back. Where years ago, we actually had to send people out to visually check if the power's back on. So this allows us to dedicate our resources to where there's really harder hit areas. So, as far as intelligent devices, with the computer age, we have a lot of diagnostics on our power lines that we didn't have years ago, which allows us to find out, what's on or off in a very quick manner. Next slide, please. Okay, so drones. Everybody has drones, for recreation. We have our own drone fleet. And so basically what's great about the drones is it allows us access into areas where, our crews may not be able to get because of flooding or road conditions. So we can, use aerial drones to take pictures of the facilities that are there that are in hard hit areas. And if you see on the right, we have a fixed wing drone, FPL Air 1, which basically during Hurricane Ian, it flew pilotless from, out in Jupiter all the way over to Fort Myers, circled the area, took photos for us, and, got us all the information we needed before we were able to deploy troops in there. And we knew exactly where to send our people and what the damage was. Next slide, please. Okay, we have our command center located in Palm Beach. It's a Category 5 rated building, 24/7 operations, and we have storm riders, just like at the EOCs, we have storm riders there as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's the big thing. We have critical infrastructure. So we work with the Broward East EOC, Clay Pacheco and his team, and we identify critical infrastructure. We go ahead and, designate the hospitals, 911 centers, and then the county EOC designates the others. And, basically what we're doing with this is these are critical functions that are mutually agreed on that, we have to go ahead and get back up to, maintain public safety following a hurricane. Next slide, please. Just somebody had mentioned this earlier, please, have a plan ready before a storm comes, have all your necessities, whatever you need, because chances are, if a storm comes through, you will be without power for a period of time. Next slide, please. Okay, so we have, online, basically, we also have an app for the iPhone or any other type of mobile device that, provides outage information. And, we, as accurately as we can, we try to provide, timelines for restoration depending on the impact of the storm. Next slide, please. And so we have plenty of media channels, social media, advertising, outreach, automated calls, traditional media to go ahead and get the message out and, try to bring some kind of insight to targeted areas as far as, when we anticipate power restoration. Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide is basically, this is kind of our holy grail, if you will, of power restoration. So, of course, power gets generated at the power plant on the bottom left, and then it gets sent over transmission lines to substations. And from the substations, that's where it really feeds into the communities. And so what we do, and like it says here on the right, we're trying to restore the greatest number of customers, and I emphasize safely being the first word, and quickly as possible. If we're looking out for safety of both, the general public plus our workers that we're bringing in. So basically what we do is we try to get the grid up. We have what are called feeder lines, which go from the substation to the neighborhoods. We attack the feeder lines first. Once we get the feeder line up, that brings a lot of customers up, and then from there we get into the neighborhoods and the smaller areas. You can look at a feeder line as similar to a tree trunk, and then you have the branches that's, grow out of the tree trunk. So that's how we restore power. People have always asked me, what's the perfect system to storm restoration? Well, there really isn't a perfect system. Perfect system is everybody's on right as the storm passes, and that's just not feasible and realistic. So what we try to do is we get the greatest number of people restored safely and quickly as possible, and our system is a good one. It may not be good for everybody depending on how long you're out, but it's, the safest and the quickest. Next slide, please. Okay, so pre-landfall, 96 hours, we're monitoring the storms. We're making our damage forecasts. We're contacting suppliers and vendors. All the out-of-state crews that you see come in, we're already contacting them. We're housing them outside of Florida, right on the border. And then once the storm hits, then we can go ahead and assess where we need to send them. Next slide, please. So we have staging sites. You've probably seen them. Basically, we have, tents there. That's where our crews that come in from out of town, that's where they park their vehicles. That's where we have all the equipment. That's where we feed them. And so they're an integral part of our operation, our staging sites. And what I'll do on this call here, I'm going to do a shameless plug. Broward County, as you know, is built up over the last several years. And a lot of the staging sites that we've had in the past, we don't have anymore because they've been developed. And so we still have some, but we'd like to have more. And, if anybody has, land or parking space that, we could utilize following a hurricane, we'd love to hear from you because, the more crews we can get in here, it definitely helps out with restoration. So, that's my shameless plug. Any assistance we could get, really appreciate it because, as Broward County has grown, everybody's seen there used to be a lot more open land. It's not so much anymore. So next slide, please. And we work 24/7 until customers are restored. We do have to give rest time to our workers, but on average, everybody's working 16 hours a day at FPL. Next slide, please. And I believe that's the end of my presentation. Thank you so much.
Morton, thank you for that. Really appreciate you sharing. And again, each year, no matter who from FPL is presenting, there's so much information to know about what you do during the storms, after the storm, but more importantly, the preparedness and the information and the things that FPL does prior to. So again, thank you for sharing. So guys, next we're gonna go ahead with my friend, Rafael Cruz from the SBDC at FAU is gonna come and share information that is certainly vital. He has some tips for you about resources on developing a plan, the assistance that you can get from the SBDC, and also he also speaks about the continuity planning, which is key, and you've heard a little bit about earlier. So Rafael, thank you for joining us, sir. As always, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Next slide. Next slide. There we go. Okay, I just have to let you know that the SBDC is a program of the SBA, which is part of the federal government. So that's just so you know that, okay, whoever's online here. So, and by the way, thanks for jumping in this important event today, right? So next slide, please. All right, so first thing you want to do is, and I'm talking to you at a business owner level, okay? So you're getting a lot of information here from FPL, from agency levels at the county and so on, right? Now we want to get down into the business level, okay? Is your business ready to survive a disaster? All right. So what is it, that you can do to help your business prepare, get through it, and then recover after? Okay. So quickly, we're going through that. Next slide, please. You want to talk about two different things. There's man-made disasters, okay, and there's natural disasters. All right. So man-made disaster could be something simple. Somebody leaves the water on and everybody leaves the office. You come in the morning and there's a flood. Right? That's a small man-made disaster. Depending on how much water, though, it could be a bad one, right? Whether it's simple power outage, road construction. Now, you might not see that as a disaster, but if they start building a new road right in front of your business, it could impact you. So how you prepare for that? So we're not just talking about things that are hurricanes, okay? The pandemic was a disaster, but it didn't knock anybody's buildings down, right? But it was a disaster just the same, okay? Next slide, please. Now, this is the important thing that you have to remember if you're a small business, right? 6% of companies that see a catastrophic data loss, right? 43% never reopen and 51% close within 2 years. Only 6% of them survive a catastrophic data loss, right? And 43 never reopen, right? So what we've seen is that just $3,000 a day, okay? It could cost you up to $3,000 a day if you have a disaster, you have to stay closed. And that $3,000 or $6,000, depending on how many days you're open or closed, can actually put you out of business if you're a small business, right? Because it puts you behind in cash flow. And that's really the issue that you want to think about, okay? So I'm not going to read every one of these slides because you can read them. So I'm just talking about things around them. Next slide, please. This is what I really want to get into, okay? While our colleagues were talking about having a disaster plan, you say, oh, wow, another plan for me to write and so on and so forth. We know you're busy. You're trying to sell and make money and take care of your business and your family. We get that. The plan doesn't have to be a 50-page plan. And I actually think you should have a 2-page or 3-page plan. Very short, sweet, to the point, so people know what it is. But from a business sense, there's reasons to do it, and they've been explained before why it's good to do. Okay, but from a business sense, this can also offer you a competitive advantage. I firmly believe that going into the future, more and more large contractors, more and more large customers, okay, are going to start to want to see what your business plan is, because they want to work with people and give contracts to people and give business to people that they know are going to be ready, okay, and are not going to be taken out by a small flood or something like that. So the way that you have your plan set up and the way you articulate your plan to your partners, your vendors, potential contract associations and things like that can actually create a competitive advantage for you, all right? Because it lets people know that you're thinking about what to do in a disaster so that you're back up and running before the competition is up and running. Next slide, please. Now, these are some simple questions to ask yourself, all right, in terms of setting up your plan. And just answer these questions. You can answer them now and you'd be on your way to setting up your plan. So what makes your business run? What are the critical functions? Okay, who are the critical people, right? What's important and non-essential? Non-essential, you don't worry about. Important, you sort of think about. Critical, that's where you focus. What are the critical things that we do, and what are the critical things that we have to do and have to keep going? Okay, or that we have to turn off before the storm and turn right back on after the storm. Then you ask yourself the question, how long can we withstand an interruption to the critical functions? Okay, now FPL is fantastic, and how they, I was here for Andrew. Okay, I actually lived through Andrew, one of the first hurricanes that made it through here. I just came down from the north, never been through a hurricane, and I was in shock at just the devastation, all right? And knowing how long your business can survive and what it's going to cost you for that time. So the 0 to 24 hours, 24 to 48, okay, it's 2 days, and 48 to 72 is 3 days. If you have perishable goods and you don't have electricity, what do you do about that, right? And how much of a loss financially does that cost? So you have to understand these questions just at a basic level. How long can we go without electricity? How long can we go without being able to get into the office? How long can we go without such and such, okay? Basically the critical functions, right? Next slide, please. The other thing is critical functions, critical records, okay? What data do you have, all right, that you need to have right after the hurricane? Now let's just use hurricane as an example, but whatever storm it is, whatever disaster it is, but we're talking about hurricane season, okay? So first of all, you want to identify the vital records to perform critical functions, and then make multiple copies, right? We recommend hard copies on location that are mobile, that you could take with you, and then off-site. There's lots of good options. In the chat, I saw somebody, it looks like they do this, okay? So I'm not giving them a plug, but I just saw them in the chat, okay? So it's not like we don't have these businesses around us, right? Now, one of the things that we can do, or that you can do, is if you go into a boating store or place, like a Bass Pro Shop, something like that, and you go to the boating section, they have these little boxes. They're usually yellow or orange or sometimes red and have a clear top, and you close them and they're vacuum sealed, right? They're plastic boxes, so, and you can carry them. It's like a small little box. You open it, you can put a map on the top of it, put a walkie-talkie in there, close it, and now you have a little go box, okay, that you can create for each of your employees, okay? So notice I said a little walkie-talkie, because sometimes your cell phone won't work, but you can communicate through walkie-talkie, or you can hear what the police or the fire are doing around your area with the walkie-talkie, okay? So it's little simple things like that that don't cost a lot of money, right? Getting a portable, okay, jump drive, right? Where you put your information on that jump drive, you put it in a Ziploc baggie, so if it gets wet, it's safe. You put it inside that box that I talked about, okay? And there you go. And you have those things with you. Why is this important? We're going to get to that in a minute, okay? But one thing that you need to be doing with your data is regularly backing it up. You have to regularly back up your data. Okay, otherwise it's no use to you, because having data from 3 years ago doesn't help, right? Now, what you should be doing every year, right before hurricane season, is photographing and or videotaping, all right, your furnishing, your fixtures, everything that's in the office, okay, and things like that. Just take some nice video of your warehouse, your office, whatever it is that you have, okay? That can become very important for insurance and SBA later on, okay? Next slide. All right, I alluded to this, okay? You wanna make sure that you have up-to-date antivirus software and a firewall is essential, right? Again, this is not about cybersecurity, but just so you know, a lot of data breaches and things like that don't happen because some genius sent you a worm into your computer, some fancy things like that, like in the movies. No, you know these people, they sit at the computer and they have their passcode on a sticky on their computer. Okay, so somebody can walk by, see that, and get into their computer and access your data. So having simple, okay, cybersecurity protocols or just habits in your business helps you with this data. But in terms of a disaster, all right, what are your policies? Or just what's the 1, 2, 3 things that you're supposed to do with data right before a hurricane and then after the hurricane? Okay, clean desk policy means if you handle financial data or things like that, we put that away before the end of the evening so that nobody can see it. Okay, passwords, encryptions, all kinds of things that you can do to keep your data secure, right? But making sure it's backed up and backed up in a safe place so that if you get hit by a flood, your data won't get damaged. That's the first thing you want to be thinking about, right? Next slide, please. Now, this is just very, very quick, 5 steps to smooth recovery, okay? So document damage or impact. Call your insurance agent, okay, and you should have one, right? File a tax extension, if applicable, if it's tax season or anything like that, and you have to extend, file for a tax extension, okay? After disasters in South Florida, and we've all seen this, there's a lot of people go around and take advantage of folks. You want to avoid contractor fraud and scams. Sometimes what drives a scam is that we're looking to save a little bit of money, just because, we'll put our roof on, or we need to fix this wall, or whatever came down. And we're looking to save a little bit of money. And that's how sometimes we open ourselves up to the fraud. So be careful of that. In your effort to save money, always be on the lookout. If somebody can do something for a lot less than everybody else says they can do it, they're probably not doing it right, okay? Another thing that sometimes we forget to do is, and this happened in the pandemic, okay? A lot of businesses forgot to maintain communication with their customers. Even though they were theoretically closed, they were still in business. So what happens is after a while, the customers thought, well, they're not in business anymore, right? So you have to let your customers know that you're still in business. And if you're doing business in a different location or virtually, let them know that, because often, remember, your customers may be looking for your services after an event because they need you. Now, this brings us to another thing, okay? And again, this is from a business perspective. We try to turn everything into a positive, right? So if we get hit by a devastating storm, okay, you have to think about what opportunities does that open up for you, okay, in terms of the type of business that you do. How many people will need your services after an event, and are you ready to deliver those services? Okay, so that's just, a business, looking at it from a business sense, right? Next slide. Now, this is not open yet, but this gets triggered once we have an event, okay, and it gets triggered by the governor, right? And Sandy and his team work with us, okay, on this bridge loan, right? So a bridge loan is a loan that gets you from point A to point B quickly. It's a short-term loan. It's not a grant, it's a loan, okay? And you use it to bridge a gap. Let's say, you need $50,000, $25,000, okay, to get something repaired, okay? This loan generally comes in faster than your insurance or your SBA disaster assistance and other things like that. So that's why it was started, okay? That's the website there. When this happens, it's triggered and you get the information coming down from like the agencies that spoke before us, okay? FPL site is fantastic. The county site is fantastic. I mean, you really get a lot of good information there to prepare your business. And that's what you're gonna be looking for, these type of things. And on our website, the SBDC basically turns into, because we work with Sandy and the state on, okay, an emergency operations also, right? We like to consider ourselves and the people that we're working with here on this call, we're economic first responders, okay? So we're working on the economic side once it's okay to get out there, all right? So that's the Florida Small Business Emergency Bridge Loan, okay? You have to fill out an application. That's why the data and your financials and things like that, you need to have copies of those, okay? So that you can fill out this information quickly and get access to the funds that are available after these disasters. Next one, next slide. Okay, now the SBA, okay, in normal circumstances, the SBA, all right, does not provide direct loans, but when there's a disaster, they do. Okay, so you have to bring financial support information. You have to be able. This is an interesting one. Can you prove that you're the owner? Do you have any kind of record? Go on to sunbiz.org and print out that information about your business, fold it up, put it in that Ziploc baggie with that little small thumb drive, put that bag in the vacuum sealed box that has a clear thing. Why did I say to put a map? I'm gonna bring that up right now. After Hurricane Andrew, when I went back outside, okay, there were things that I used as landmarks to drive around that were not there anymore. So what happens is if you don't have a map, okay, you can easily get lost in your own neighborhood, because the tree that was there, the house that was there, the store that was there is just not there anymore. And you start to lose your bearings. So that's the reason for a map. And GPS might not be available to you. So using a land map, sometimes even having a compass so you know which direction to go in, right? But those are things for you to move around, because one of our colleagues talked about your personal. And yes, first is personal, then business. First personal, family, then business. First personal, family, and your team, then the business, okay? So what happens is you want to be able to access whatever kind of federal dollars or any other dollars available. So the faster you can fill out an application, that means you have the data necessary to fill that application out, the faster, okay, you're going to get access. All right. So that's why it's important to keep these records and things in place. Okay, next slide. I already said this, direct loans. Okay. Now, good credit history is important. These are loans. Again, these are loans, not grants. All right, so we're talking about loans. Physical damage, okay, is one type of loan, and then economic injury is the other one. It means something came through, but it didn't blow out your windows, it didn't tear off your roof, but it closed you down for 2, 3, 4, 5 days. That's economic injury. That's different from physical. Those are just the two different types of loans, okay? Right up to now, they're up to $2 million each, okay, in working capital, right, for those. To be provided to businesses so they can continue, or continuity, they can keep going. These tend to be long-term loans, all right? So you don't have to pay them back in 3 years, right? Next slide, please. Now, these are just some general business resources. The Florida SBDC is part of a national program. Okay, again, it's SBA program. It's a part of the SBA, all right, program. And Florida SBDC, we cover the whole state of Florida. And in other states, they have their own SBDCs, okay? The Florida Bridge Loan there, you see that site? Now, this is important. The last thing you want to do is fill out surveys right after a disaster. The last thing you want to do. But I'm going to ask you to please fill this survey out, because the data that goes into that survey lets the people know, all right, that are making decisions where to deploy the money, where to deploy it's letting them know where the most damage is. And if nobody reports back, they think, oh, everything is fine, and they put the money somewhere else. All right. So think about it that way. By you attending to this survey as quickly as possible and letting them know exactly all the damage that you have, all right, that gives them data so that they can verify and say, listen, this is why we need to send this team down there, or this is why we need to send more money down this way to Broward County. All right. It's very, very important to do this. All right. Now, SBA disaster loans, that's the general, okay, website. But if you go on SBA.gov, okay, you'll find it easily, especially during this time of year. Okay, next slide. All right, that's our information. Okay, but the next slide is even better because it gives you the website. Okay, now we help folks put together continuity plans and things like that, and help them, again, prepare for disasters. We don't work miracles. I mean, when you own a small business, right, do a couple of small things, right, a couple of things that shouldn't cost you that much and can help you really prepare, okay, for whatever comes our way, because we don't know what's coming, but One of the things is a responsibility as a small business owner, as a leader in the small business space, in the business area, is that you should be more aware of this than other people, and you should be spreading the word, right? Spread it to your team and their families. They all depend on you, all right? Noah's already saying this might be a more active season. We may or may not get something. If we don't, great. But if we do, we'll be at least a little bit more prepared than we were yesterday, all right? Next slide. Thank you very much. I appreciate your attention.
Rafael, thank you, and thanks for sharing that information. And guys, as mentioned, this PowerPoint will be back on our website by the end of the week, so you can check it out. And those contact information, that preparation information, that consulting information that Rafael just shared on behalf of the SBDC and the other speakers will also be there. Okay, let's talk about you as a business. Let's talk about your employees. Got my friend Doug here from CareerSource Broward. Doug, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Sandy. Appreciate it. So good morning, everyone. Glad you're here. This is all critical information. And what we'll be sharing with you, what I'll be sharing with you right now, does involve that employee angle, but also how it can help you as a business person if that disaster hits and now you're looking at, okay, what do I do? Do I lay off? Do I cut hours? How can I keep things rolling? So we're going to cover that a lot. Next slide. I'm just going to touch on a couple quick things. If you had to boil everything down that we do into one phrase, we connect business with talent. That's what we do. Next slide. And we do that in different ways. And this is all, by the way, you've paid for all this already. These are your tax dollars as business people, business owners coming back into the county. So we can help you out with all these things: job postings on Employed Florida, talent recruitment, career fairs. We can pre-screen candidates, provide you with data about positions, about growth or decline, and economic information as well. And of course, financial assistance for employee training. But let's key in, next slide, please, on what happens when, go ahead to the next slide. What happens when that disaster hits? And, we hate to see that, but it's a reality and something that always gets people a little nervous. Next slide, a little more nervous this time of year. So we'll talk about outplacement services. Okay, the most obvious one is, okay, reemployment assistance, particularly for those that are laid off. Maybe your business is no longer there, period, because of someone mentioned Hurricane Andrew earlier. My family was living down in South Miami-Dade at that time, and it was horrible. I mean, it was, and like you said, you couldn't recognize anything. It was just an absolute disaster. Larger businesses tend to be the ones that need to file a WARN notice. That usually involves laying off a large group of people. So in this case, a small business, this isn't probably something you'll need to deal with at all. But it just starts showing you how, okay, we need to be attentive to when we're going to be facing these decisions. Go ahead, next slide. The short time compensation program is a phenomenal tool to help you as a small business measure, okay, if I can stay open better for business, I keep that competitive edge, and I can still serve my customers while keeping my employees. Now, how does this work? First of all, it's a totally volunteer program, okay? And the goal of it is to help you keep your employees running with you, with the business, reducing their hours, okay? And we supplement, we don't, CareerSource doesn't. The state of Florida supplements the reduced income of the employees with some dollars that come from the feds. Okay, so what is the goal here? Let's avoid laying people off totally. That's the idea here. So you reduce hours instead of laying off, keeps you competitive, keeps people employed during what is obviously going to be a horrible situation. And so everyone can benefit from this. Next slide, please. Okay, you as the business owner could complete an application for short-term compensation, and it's once a year, okay? And the idea here is at least 10% of your people would need to have reduced hours, okay? So if you have a staff of, let's just say 50, you wouldn't say, oh, I want to reduce one person's hours, I'll apply for this program. No, it would need to be at least 10% of your workforce, okay? Now, this applies only to full-time employees, does not apply to part-time. And go to the next slide, please. And for them, okay. I saw the slide pop in front of me and I was going to go down another road a moment. Your reduced hours, so you're paying less to your employees when this happens. You must have them on at least 24 hours, reduced hours. Okay, can't go below that. And so these are full-timers now working 24 hours, and each of them would fill out an application for what essentially becomes the reemployment insurance, or what we used to know as unemployment insurance. And then that supplements the check they'll be getting from you. So reduced hours, it's a reduced financial burden on you, but then turn around and the reemployment insurance is now covering the difference. So it's kind of a win-win for everybody. You keep your employees going, you keep your business going, they remain employed, and they're getting that additional support from the reemployment insurance. This is particularly good for a lot of folks that went through the lockdowns. There were some industries that suffered a lot more because of one, reputation and the way they did it, handled it poorly. And it was just like, okay, you're all gone. And then as everything started unlocking and things were now opening up, and they were calling back employees, the employers were saying, hey, you know what? I don't need this. I'm sorry. And so what this does is it can help you from that, certainly from how you deal with your employees and their loyalty to you. And it certainly, it just looks good, period. Instead of just saying, you're all gone. We had a disaster. I'll just let you go. No, keep them, maintain them, reduced hours. So it's a win-win for everybody. Go ahead to the next page. Thank you. So you would go, this is handled through the Department of Revenue, state of Florida Department of Revenue, and you can fill that application out 2 weeks before an event. So if you're eyeing hurricane season and you kind of wait, you say, okay, let's see when the first real threat can happen. You can apply 2 weeks before that hurricane would be expected to hit. Now, no damage if it doesn't hit. You got the application open, next one comes around, it might hit us, then you're already, as it were, in the books. Okay, so full time for the state is 32 to 40 hours. So as long as you got employees on that work schedule, you just need to bump them down to 24 hours a week. And that is what meets the requirement for the short-term compensation program. Next slide. Okay, like I said, individual employees will fill out an application on their end. And then there's obviously monitoring done to report the work hours, and then the employees get paid that from the reemployment insurance portion. They get paid either payment to EFT payment or debit card. So like I said, it creates a win-win scenario for everybody there. Next slide. And program. So that's one way we help you, we help the employees, and you can continue in business, keep things going. But what about worst case scenario? Maybe it's been so bad, your business just physically isn't there anymore. It's going to take you a while to kind of ramp up. Maybe the building needs, or your office needs restructuring, remodeling, kind of, needs to be gutted out and repaired. Well, you might have to lay some folks off at some point. It depends on the scenario and how much damage there is. Next slide. But one of the things we like to do is kind of step inside, meet with your employees. We can do that at our centers. It can be done virtually, but let them know, okay, here are resources for you during this difficult time. Okay, no one likes to be unemployed. No one, not only you're dealing with the fact that you don't have a job anymore, but now you're dealing with perhaps damage to your home, loss of electricity, all the other issues that accompany this kind of thing. So we go over a number of resources available to people during these times. Reemployment assistance, okay, which is the unemployment program. Florida Kid Care or affordable health care. If there's a time when no insurance is available, they need some coverage right now. Credit counseling, okay. Other employee benefits. 211 if there's some real emotional distress and concerns there. There's certainly resources available for the 211 hotline. So we inform them of all these things that are available to them, as well as resources that we have at our centers that are available to them at no cost. A lot of folks, especially if they've been employed for a while, first thing they say if they're let go is, gee, I don't know how to do a resume. I haven't done one in 10 years. How do I do this? Or how do I interview? What do I do now? We have workshops on all of those, and we make those available to anybody who would like to tune in. And they're available in person. They're available. Some of them are available virtually as well. And if there's a disaster, chances are a lot of the virtual capabilities will just increase. We at one point, of course, with all the lockdowns prior, we had everything going on virtually. So we can quickly respond and shift modes and make everything available virtually as needed. So next slide, please. Just so you know, in case you don't, on that last bullet, Florida doesn't have any local unemployment office anymore. Everything's done virtually with them. But what we do is we work as a partner with them. So if there's a surge in unemployment claims, whether it's due to the economy or due to a disaster, we just step in to assist. We don't have all the answers, but we can help folks. Okay, here's how you do to get online. We can provide computers, internet access, and you can start get things rolling. But so we kind of serve as that point, that partner point for people that need to claim the reemployment assistance. Okay, next slide. We can also let folks know maybe you need some upskilling. You might be eligible for some training grant funding to help you upskill and get another job. Okay, I mentioned the workshops we have on a number of resources that we can help people kind of plug in again to LinkedIn if they haven't been on there for a while, get connected to social media. It'll help them kind of network and reach out. We can do all these things and assist individuals as they're looking to kind of re-enter the workforce and get another job. But hopefully things won't be that bad. But again, we're there for those kind of extreme circumstances as well. Next slide. You can find us all over the place. I believe the next slide has my contact info. I also put it in the chat. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. Oh, no, it's not. Okay. Those are about our training grants. The next slide, I think, might be my contact. There you go. Okay. So, oh, actually, that is the wrong extension. It's 3011. I did have it placed in the chat as well. But keep us in mind. If you call the main number, of course, they'll be able to get to me either way if you can't reach me any other way. But do keep that in mind. The short-term compensation program is a phenomenal way for you to remain competitive, to not just do the kind of the extreme off to just let everybody go. No, there's options, and you should really consider that as long as it makes things work for you. Thank you very much.
Doug, thank you. Thanks for sharing that information. Definitely important information about employees and preparing yourself as a business to maintain your employees, prepare opportunities for your employees, and as you as a business to gain. Unfortunately, if we ever have to go through, you want to know where your resources and additional support is. So guys, as we get ready to go to our last speaker, we got Mr. Clein, Florida Independent Insurance Agents. It is about knowing and protecting your assets. Mr. Clein, thanks for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you. You can go to the next slide. So we're going to talk about being prepared for the unexpected disaster. Could your business survive a major emergency? A violent windstorm rips the roof off your building. An explosion damages your building. A fire happens in your location. Any of these things that can happen that you need to be prepared for. So you can go to the next slide, please. Why is it important to have insurance? It helps covers the costs associated with property damage and liability claims. Without insurance, you're going to have to pay out of your pocket, and most people are not prepared to do that. It helps reduce the risk of your business having to dip into their own savings or possibly going out of business, which was talked about by some of the other presenters. Most businesses are not prepared or do not have reserves for this. You can go to the next slide. The type of policies that you should concern yourself with: property insurance, and this would be for the building, your business personal property, which is your contents, your inside, your business income, equipment breakdown. Then there's liability insurance. Doesn't necessarily concern about a catastrophe, except for if you do happen to get sued because something does happen, which could be like a cyber incident at your business where information's stolen. You could be caught without having any type of coverage. And then, of course, you have flood insurance, workers' comp, employee theft. There's a lot of other insurances that everybody should be aware of. The next slide. Property insurance provides the payment to the insured if his or her business is damaged or destroyed by any of the items that we've talked about. The hurricane obviously is the one that we're kind of centering around, but you could have a flood. Just recently, FEMA has redone the flood zones in Broward County. So many people were in a flood zone, then taken out of a flood zone, and they're being put back into a flood zone. So you need to be aware, if you're in a flood zone, the type of policy you might want to have. Many of those people in Fort Lauderdale, when they had the rain, the flood that they had out there, had no coverage for that. Next slide. Recommended insurance is for your business, the building, the contents, your business income. Business income is very important. If you are out of business, it replaces lost income or any of your regular expenses that could be occurring that you still have to pay, which could be anything from rent, mortgage payment, if you had payroll, any subscriptions, any type of ongoing expenses that you would have going. And that's real important to have as part of your insurance package. Next slide. So you need to determine what your risk is before the claim happens or before the catastrophe happens. So your deductible is the amount that you're responsible for. So you need to know that you have enough money to pay that. Currently, hurricane deductibles are percentage deductibles based on the amount of coverage that you have. So you need to be aware it could be a flat $2,500 deductible. It could be 2%, 5%, 10%. We're seeing as high as 15% now on hurricane deductibles. And that's not 15% of the claim. It's 15% of what you insure. So it's important to make sure that you can afford what your deductible is. You don't want to go insurance poor and over-insure and have smaller deductibles until you can determine what you can actually pay, because the smaller the deductible, the higher the premium is. Next slide. So here's how the claim works. The event occurs resulting in the loss, the hurricane, fire, tornado, etc. Business makes the claim to the insurance company, and an adjuster is assigned by the insurance company. When you have catastrophe claims, there really aren't enough adjusters in the area to handle many claims at one time. So the insurance companies usually bring in people, just like FPL, they stage. They do the same thing with adjusters. They have private companies that come from out of the state, fill in the gap so that they can get out to as many people as soon as possible. The legislation just changed over the last 2 years about the timing of when an insurance company needs to react and supply information back to the insured in case of a claim, and it's to the benefit of the business owner. Now they have a much shorter time to respond and react to when the claim happens and get the claim adjusted. Next slide. Just some claims examples. You have a hurricane, causes damage to your business resulting in $100,000 of property damage. Insured has $250,000 worth of property and business income at $10,000 per month. Deductibles are 5%. You need to know. So that 5% is of the $2,500. Of the $250,000. So the insured is responsible for $12,500 of the claim. That's your expense. So you're not gonna, if you had a claim and the claim was $10,000, you're responsible because it's under the deductible. So you just need to be aware of your deductibles. You need to review this with your insurance agent every year to make sure that you're in the right financial position for these deductibles. So we can go to the next slide. 4-point disaster recovery strategy that everybody should have. I made a note while listening to some of these other people. Everybody used the word plan, and everyone, talks about having a plan. And you need to have this before the claim or the disaster happens. So minimize the risk of damage in advance of an emergency. Plan. If you know the storm is coming, back up your information. Take it off premises. Our office is totally on the cloud now, and we've made arrangements that if a storm were to come, we could pack up and go and be anywhere so that we could be able to service our customers. You're going to need to be prepared to service your customers. So minimize the risk of damage in advance of any emergency. Develop a disaster recovery plan. Know what you're going to do if the claim were to happen. Know that you're able to go somewhere else to continue to conduct business, or maybe there's just no way you can do business, but you need to know what it's going to be. Review your insurance program, make sure you have sufficient coverage to pay for the indirect cost of the disaster. And that's like the deductibles or anything else that might happen where you're no longer generating income because your customers are out of business. Know the cost of repairs you're building. And review on a regular basis all the components of your disaster recovery, fire safety, emergency preparedness, business continuation, and your insurance programs. And you need to make sure that your employees are on the same page as you. It was also talked about, make sure you take care of your family first. Obviously, you got to take care of your family first, but know that if you have employees that live in Dade County and your office is in Broward, and they're not going to be able to come across the border, into the county because the hurricane or the disaster happened in Dade County versus happening in Broward, you need to know so that you can communicate with your employees. Most businesses now do have some sort of online presence where your employees might be able to work from home or temporarily do that. So just know that in advance. And if you need help in identifying hazards and risks in developing the plan, you need to call your insurance company. All the insurance companies now have loss control services on their websites. They have plans that are, fill in information based on what you have and make sure that you're relaying that information to your employees. Next slide. And just to kind of review, insurance is an important part of your financial plan for business. Know your risk tolerance is what we talked about, the deductible. Know what you can afford, know what you can't afford. You don't want your deductible to put you out of business. Even with insurance, you still need reserves. And the purpose of insurance is to shift the risk from you to the insurance company. So know the risk that you're able to take. Know the risk that you can afford if the claim were to happen. And then there's several types of insurance, so you need to be aware. Every business needs different type of insurance. We talked about the main lines of coverage, but every business has a different. If you're a landscape company, you need equipment coverage. If you're a financial business, you're going to need maybe higher business income coverage. All those things are important, and they tie into when the SBA is going to be able to come in and maybe help you out on the deductible side, or any of these other entities that are out there that can help because of the claim. Next slide. That's just a quick review of the insurance that's available out there. You could really go in depth to it. I could spend 4 hours on talking about insurance specific to the to a catastrophe, but this is just touching and highlighting the areas that you need to know where coverage is needed. But I highly recommend that you at least once a year contact your insurance agent or insurance company and discuss what you have, what changed during the last 12 months that you might need to either increase coverage, decrease coverage, add new coverages to your policy, and make sure to review that every year. And this is the best time to do it, obviously, before hurricane season. And we recommend we meet with our clients the first quarter of the year just to have it all set up prior to hurricane season. I believe that's it.
Steve, thanks for sharing that. And again, guys, the order of the program is the order of the program. But again, every time I get to that insurance part, you got to remember, during hurricane season, if we end up having an activity, at the end of the day, you needed to make sure prior that you had insurance, you had the right insurance, you had enough insurance. So definitely check with your insurance provider to make sure that you're going into the season the right way, and then give yourself an audit at some point during the season, after the season, to make sure that you're carrying enough coverage on everything that you do. So with that, guys, I want to thank all of my speakers. We're now getting ready to go into Q&A. They're still around. So if the questions are to me or any of them, we'll make sure we'll address them and get you the proper person with the right answer. So with that, whichever one of our CRO staff is going to guide us through the questions, let's get started.
Hi, Sandy. It's Vanetta. I'm reviewing now in the Q&A, and if anyone has any questions, please be sure to type them in the Q&A right now. We did have a question. I'm trying to find it. It was typed into the chat area a little bit earlier on, but I don't think the gentleman moved it into the Q&A. We do have some comments typed into the Q&A by Ms. Gwen Beatty. I don't believe that there is actually a question that she's typed in. And Gwen, if you're still on, please clarify.
She's just sharing information. I just read
Right.
it too. So guys, and that's one of the things that, of course, when we do our workshops, we always tell you to network. Gwen is sharing her information. She's sharing her recommendations. That means this is one of her industries. So she's telling you if you're looking for assistance, she's right there. Again, as a county, we don't single anyone out, but again, we always encourage, which is why we say give a shout out when you join our workshops. We like folks to share information about who they are, what they do. And again, as our viewers and as our listeners here, they can always make a decision of whom they want to work with or where they want to get additional information. We're just here to try to provide that information. So thank you for sharing those comments as well. I scrolled through too as Vanetta as well. I didn't see any actual questions.
Nor do I, Sandy. I went back through.
Do you have a survey at the end of this presentation or no?
No, we only have maybe one question that we can ask that was pre-built, and that would be it, unless anyone has any questions that they'd like to get addressed now.
If not, guys, understand this. The PowerPoint will be posted. We'll even make sure there's a reminder Wednesday in our newsletter that the PowerPoint is posted, because we want to make sure all businesses, as many businesses as possible, and we have 17 chambers of 31 municipalities, about a half dozen EDOs, economic development organizations, and about another 24 community partners like SBDC, SCORE, and others that we share our information with, because we want to get our information to the businesses. We know it's challenging. There's over 85,000 businesses in Broward County alone. So again, we can't do it by ourselves. So we're going to put this information in as many locations as possible to make sure that we get this out to all the businesses as we all prepare to go into hurricane season. And as was mentioned earlier by one of the speakers, the things we do, even our emergency operation management team, it's not just about hurricane, it's any incident. We want to also make sure that you guys are ready, or at least know where to get your resources. So that certification poll is just us trying to find out who's on the call today. And if you're one of our certified firms, or if you have interest in being one of our certified firms, let us know. But with that, again, I just want to thank each of our speakers for giving of their time, sharing this detailed information as a part of a PowerPoint that we will post and keep up throughout the entire season. And with that, then Vanetta, I am going to close and say thank you, everyone. Thank you, speakers. And we'll all be in touch. And if you want to hear a portion of this again, I think later this week, we're actually doing the workshop for our municipalities. With that, thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.